Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari-chan and welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are doing well. I am not. Nevertheless, I am going to read because it will be a great distraction for me. I'm just going to go ahead and give you guys an update now that my grandfather finally passed away. So I'm just waiting for my dad to give us more details on when the funeral is going to be, but obviously certain plans that I was considering are not going to happen, and I may have to take a couple of days off of reading to handle that. Nevertheless, I want to read because I don't know what else to do. Like, I don't want to sit around and just cry all day and night. I cried so much that my eyeballs literally hurt yesterday. Yeah, so let's just go ahead and get started, and I'm excited to see what happens next. Oh, obviously, in case it wasn't clear from the photos and stuff, we're reading Remnants of Filth, Volume 3, and we're actually covering a lot of chapters today, starting at 73. Chapter 73, Chuyi the Beautiful. Since Shee had put it like that, Goo Mahng tried his best to avoid recalling details from before he defected. This was sometimes the way of things. After the momentary satisfaction of uncovering a secret, endless disappointment and frustration came in its wake. He wanted to enjoy his life, so it was best to remain obedient. Shee grew busier after the spring hunt in March. Overwhelmed with work, his routines disappeared and his appetite worsened. Seeing him neglect sleep and skip meals, housekeeper Lee ordered the kitchen to bring boxes of food to his desk. However, Shee still often forgot to eat, or would find the food cold by the time he finally raised his head from his heap of scrolls, long after the sun had gone down. This happens every year around this time, Lee sighed. There's no point in cajoling him. He eats cold food and drinks old tea all day. Even an iron stomach wouldn't tolerate it. He's just asking to get sick. Housekeeper Lee seemed to have jinxed it. The day after he complained, Shee fell ill. Never mind how ruthless Shee was while at war, only the servants of Shihun Manor knew how high maintenance he became when he got sick. It wasn't that he was fragile or that he inconvenienced others or made a big deal of his sickness. There was a much more insufferable issue. He was picky. He kept up his usual activities like attending court and annotating papers, but his temper worsened with his discomfort, and he became even more particular about everything than usual. When Shee's stomach issues flared up again, Lee went to Medicine Master Jiang for a prescription, and Medicine Master Jiang lambasted him with everything he had. Huh! He's sick again. Another stomach bug. He's seen me for this problem since he was 14. I take such pains to fix him up, but he couldn't care less. He starts forgetting meals or eating nothing but cold food every day when military affairs get busy. If he keeps going like this, he may as well ascend and be done with it. Maybe he doesn't mind suffering, but I certainly mind him wrecking my reputation. Get out! Lee could only nod, sweat beading on his forehead. He somehow managed to extract the prescription between bouts of Medicine Master Jiang's ranting, but was met with one further command. Keep an eye on that lord of yours. Make sure he eats his food while it's hot and has soup before each meal. And if he doesn't listen, don't come to Jiang Manor again. It's too fucking embarrassing. Thus, Lee instructed the kitchen to make soup every day to aid Shee's recovery. It was at this precise moment that Shee's fussiness reared its head. On the first day, the kitchens made white radish and pork rib soup. Shee wouldn't drink it. It's too greasy. On the second day, the kitchens made pigeon soup instead. Shee refused it. There's a weird aftertaste. On the third day, the kitchens tried making pig liver and spinach soup. Shee didn't touch it. Seeing offal turns my stomach. And so on and so forth, until the seventh day. Li Wei walked dejectedly out of Shihajuan's study with a pot of straw mushroom and chicken soup in his hands. The master cook who had accompanied him apprehensively asked, "How did it go?" "He didn't touch it at all. He's too busy looking at his sand table." Li Wei rolled his eyes. "He said the smell of stewed chicken makes him nauseous and he doesn't have an appetite." Sweaty and pale, the cook felt deeply chagrined. "That's not my fault. If the Lord carries on like this, his appetite will only get worse. Didn't Medicine Master Jiang say so too? Healing that stomach of his is more about nurture than medicine." Li Wei sighed. "Yes, exactly." Morsi's appetite had indeed worsened over the past few days, but he didn't pay it much mind. As long as something was edible, whether it was hot or cold didn't matter to him, even if the food in question was a rock-hard bun. He'd have time to recover once this busy period was over. While Li Wei and the cook were heaving deep sighs under the eaves, Goo Mahng happened to walk past the courtyard with his arms tucked in his sleeves and the black dog Fando at his heels. Noticing the worry creasing their faces, he asked helpfully, "What's with you two?" The cook gave him a scornful look. "Are you done chopping the firewood? If not, get to it. Don't meddle in the business of others." "I'm done," Goo Mahng said. The cook was about to retort when Li Wei was struck by inspiration. Goo Mahng's cooking wasn't bad. Although Morsi hadn't offered any words of praise the last time he cooked, every plate had come back clean. They were in a dire situation, so why not fall back on their last resort? So thinking, Li Wei succinctly summarized Morsi's situation for Goo Mahng. "Oh." Goo Mahng glanced at the study. No wonder his face has gotten thinner recently. He looked down and addressed the dog. "Fando, soon he'll be even skinnier than you." Fando barked twice, as though he resented the comparison. Li Wei sighed again. "We've already tried anything and everything to convince him to eat. We've offered every kind of exotic delicacy, but the Lord just never has an appetite, and he's never in the mood to eat either." He carefully watched Goo Mahng's face as he said his next words. "Why don't you try?" "This guy," the cook interrupted, dripping disdain. "What can he possibly do?" But Goo Mahng nodded. "He can't keep starving himself. I'll give it a try." Goo Mahng planned to cook fish, so he needed the plumpest, freshest fish. Li Wei pointed him toward Peach Blossom Lake on the eastern outskirts of the capital. Not only was the lake flourishing with spiritual energy, which was good for cultivation, but the fish within it were known to be deliciously tender. So that afternoon, with his fishing gear in tow, a net strapped to his back, and his black dog at his heels, Goo Mahng went to the city outskirts to fish. Peach Blossom Lake wasn't difficult to find. When Goo Mahng arrived, he found it profoundly quiet and calm. Due to the endless flow of spirit energy veins, peach blossom petals fluttered all year round, dyeing everything between the heavens and earth the rosy pink of clouds at sunset. Numerous craggy boulders protruded from the lake's surface, and though it wasn't large, it had a great many hidden nooks and crannies. Pavilions and walkways lined its shores, and every errant breeze sent flowers drifting across the steps. "Nice place," Goo Mahng said. "No wonder Li Wei said it was good for baths." He turned to the dog. "Fando, do you want to take one?" Fando excitedly wagged his tail and leapt into the water like an arrow loosed from a bow. It was yet late spring, but the days were already warm with the sun shining so brightly. Goo Mahng had planned to disguise himself with a hat and cloak, but since he was alone and it would be difficult to catch fish while bundled up, he took off his shoes, socks, and cloak, then rolled up his pants to wade into the clear lake water. Uff! Fando barked loudly in excitement. He gamboled and scampered around Goo Mahng in the shallows, splashing water everywhere. Goo Mahng brought a finger to his lips. "Behave," he warned the dog. "Go catch a fish for the poor Princess Morsi." Fando barked and yelped as he cavorted about with even greater enthusiasm, chasing all of the fish from the shallows into the depths. Goo Mahng was rendered speechless. "Arf, arf, arf. If you keep making a nuisance of yourself, I'll make you into dog soup. See if I don't." A gentle approach was useless. Fando fell in line as soon as Goo Mahng got tough, the way he remembered he used to be. Fando whimpered and tucked his tail between his legs, trembling with fear as he scrambled ashore. He vigorously shook the water from his fur and sat on the banks to soak up the sunlight, tongue lolling and beady eyes fixed on Goo Mahng. Goo Mahng's martial arts had recovered a great deal, but his spiritual energy could never return to its level at the peak of his abilities. Nonetheless, thanks to his improved martial skills, he caught 3 plump and meaty grass carps in no time at all. Grass carps were big, but they weren't the best for cooking. After some consideration, Goo Mahng took up his net and made his way around some rocks that loomed out of the water to look for fish in other parts of Peach Blossom Lake. His mind could be quite sharp sometimes, but it could be dull indeed at others. For example, at this moment, his thoughts turned sluggish and simple-minded. He yelled, "Fish! Fish! Come here, fishies!" splashing through the water at every step. Even the fish in the distance vanished when they heard his clumsy movements. Goo Mahng brushed away some green vines dangling over the rocky crags and turned a corner. "Fish, come quick!" "Who's there?" The voice that called out was as beautiful as Kunshan jade and richly melodious, yet with a vicious note of threat. Goo Mahng jumped in fright and turned unthinkingly to look toward the speaker. He saw a flash of golden light the instant before a spell exploded on the water's surface, inches from his knees. Amid the haze of its thunderous splash, a white-clad silhouette soared over the waterfall. Beads of water flew up to join the crashing cascade. When the pillar of water thrown up by the spell finally dispersed, Goo Mahng, still coughing, heard that crisp, menacing voice say, "Look up." Goo Mahng mopped the water from his face and squinted in the direction of the speaker. If the memories he'd regained to this point were anything to go by, people who flew into an embarrassed rage upon being caught bathing in the depths of a peach blossom pool were generally great beauties. Goo Mahng's strong and innate sense of chivalry hadn't diminished a jot, so we hastily said, "Miss, I'm so sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. I just came here to catch Before he could finish the word, a stream of water shot out and slapped him squarely across the face. Caught off guard, Goo Mahng was knocked straight back into the lake by the force of that purported beauty's stunning blow. After swallowing several mouthfuls of lake water, he managed to stagger upright once more. The beauty's voice was bone-chillingly cold. "Open your damn eyes and take a good look at whom you are speaking to." "I do want to look," Goo Mahng thought. "But it's inappropriate for men and women to get too close. It's better if I don't." But then he thought, "No, you're the one who invited me to take a look, so I'll seem guilty if I don't." Only then did he wonder, why does this voice sound familiar? Bracing himself against the wet stone wall, Goo Mahng shook his dripping head much like Fando. Then he opened his clear blue eyes and looked toward the boulder outside the waterfall's cave. He was rendered wholly speechless. The speaker was beautiful, to be sure, but unfortunately, it was a man. And not only that, one Goo Mahng knew, Murong Chuyi. This man had the same hang-up as Morsi. He didn't like to fully disrobe when bathing and preferred to enter the water wearing a bathrobe. By now, he had already draped a second white robe over his sodden garment. Beneath his sharp, inky brows, his phoenix eyes were lowered, his gaze colder than the waters of Peach Blossom Lake. After a few beats of silence, Goo Mahng cupped his hands in greeting. "Sorry, Daga, pardon me." "Hold it," Murong Chuyi said, tone frosty. "Is there something else, Daga?" Murong Chuyi raised a hand and tapped his finger upon his clothes. A fiery glow sprang to life at the tip of his pale, slender finger. Under this brilliant light, his wet clothes were dried in a flash. Murong Chuyi sat on a boulder and shot Goo Mahng a glance. "Come here." "We're both men here, and it was just a look. No one got taken advantage of." Goo Mahng faltered. "If you're upset, why don't I... After racking his brain, Goo Mahng tentatively offered, "Why don't I strip and let you see me too?" Murong Chuyi glared with his phoenix eyes. Who wants to see you? Come here. Goo Mahng had little choice but to do as he was bid. His ting gong wasn't as good as Murong Chuyi's, so he was compelled to climb the tall and slippery stone platform on all fours. He slipped a couple times before pathetically clambering upward. At no point during this process did Murong Chuyi offer him a hand. Once he reached the top, he approached Murong Chuyi. It wasn't until he was up close that Murong noted how pale Murong Chuyi's face was. Even his lips were bloodless. Goo Mahng couldn't help but stare. What happened to you? Murong Chuyi closed his eyes. Go to Jiang Manor. Goo Mahng was utterly lost. Why would I go to Jiang Manor? Ask Jiang Fuli for some heart balm. Bring it back to me. Not even a will you or please. Goo Mahng took this to mean that the errand was another one of his chores. He nodded once and turned to leave. It was only after walking quite a distance that the other shoe dropped, and he turned in puzzlement. Wait a minute. Why do you want me to do this? Because you happened to pass by, Murong Chuyi replied. This man spoke like those crazy Taoists in the stories who would say upon bumping into a youthful warrior, Young friend, fate has brought us together. Come to the mountains with me and learn cultivation, before dragging the hapless youth with them over all protestations. Goo Mahng skulked. It's not like I owe you anything, and you just hit me. Why should I help you? Light sparked at Murong Chuyi's fingertips. His expression was ferocious, as if he was about to lash out with another ruthless strike. He glared icily. Are you going or not? Goo Mahng shook his head. A true man could be corrupted by neither wealth nor power. Huh. What's wrong? The light at Murong Chuyi's fingertips had winked out. Murong Chuyi lowered his head and held his sleeve to his mouth as he coughed up bloody spittle. You're sick, Goo Mahng exclaimed. Murong Chuyi was obviously struggling to maintain his poise, but when he tried to speak again, he choked on a great mouthful of dark blood. You must not tell Yoo-eh. Pausing, he panted a few times, eyes flashing with stubbornness. That I was cultivating here. I must not tell Yoo-eh. Murong Chuyi was thoroughly weakened, but his expression and bearing were still as keen as ever. Never, he gasped. Goo Mahng was silent. Promise me. Goo Mahng seemed to be stupefied by this man's imperious air. His head moved to nod before he realized he was doing it. The second Goo Mahng gave his assent, Murong Chuyi collapsed like a bow drawn too taut, his willpower dissolving the moment he had Goo Mahng's word. Eyes fluttering shut, he crumbled atop the damp, frigid boulder and passed out cold. Speechless, Goo Mahng stared blankly at him. After a long while, he bent down and prodded at Murong Chuyi's cheek. His pale, thin visage was cool as stone to the touch, unnerving yet pitiable in a way that was difficult to describe. Goo Mahng swallowed nervously. I'll go get your medicine right now, okay? Don't just faint like that, bro. Chapter 74. Primal Desire. Heart balm? Inside the medicine master's manor, Jiang Fuli set down the scroll in his hands and raised his almond eyes to study Goo Mahng, who was soaked to the bone and still had a fishing net strapped to his back. Who do you want this for, Morsi or Murong Lian? Murong... He stopped himself, remembering the request Murong Chuyi had made right before passing out. Goo Mahng knew a gentleman's word was gold. He had nodded to Murong Chuyi, so he had to do as he promised. Not gonna tell you, he said instead. Jiang Fuli narrowed his eyes. Do you know what kind of substance this is? Yeah, it's for healing. It can heal, yes, but it can also harm, Jiang Fuli said. Heart balm is a plant that's half demonic in nature. Although it can be used to dull pain, its toxicity cannot be underestimated. I have piles of it in my storerooms. It's not particularly precious, so I don't mind giving you some, but... Goo Mahng raised his hand. I swear I won't use it to poison people. Jiang Fuli scoffed. Poison people? Well, I'm right here in Chonghua. If you dare to get up to trouble where I can see, I'll respect you as a man of courage. Then What did you say but for? Goo Mahng asked. But I will tell your lord Shihajun that you asked me for heart balm. Goo Mahng thought it over. Murong Chuyi was still unconscious, so saving him was of utmost urgency. Once Goo Mahng brought him back to life, he could explain all of this to Murong Chuyi, so he assented. He followed Jiang Fu Li to the storeroom to fetch the herb, waiting as Jiang Fu Li prepared it, then took the jar of medicine back into the recesses of Peach Blossom Lake with all speed. Murong Chuyi was still lying where he'd fallen. He didn't look well at all. His elegant face was devoid of color, and his skin was ice cold to the touch. Goo Mahng lifted him into a sitting position, opened the jar, and slowly began to pour the medicine into Murong Chuyi's mouth. This process proved difficult. Although unconscious, Murong Chuyi still coughed from time to time. He got half the medicine down and choked on the other, brows knitted as he muttered unintelligibly. Goo Mahng heard him call for his older sister, then say Yue Chongqing's name, his expression pained throughout. Oh? Goo Mahng wasn't close with Murong Chuyi, but his compassion still won in the end. He stroked Murong Chuyi's hair and soothed him with gentle words. "Jie," Murong Chuyi murmured. To which Goo Mahng said, "Jie's here. There now, there now." "Juntian," Murong Chuyi muttered. To which Goo Mahng said, "Yep, I'm that little white bird. There now, fourth uncle. Here, there's still a little medicine left." Toward the end, Murong Chuyi's colorless lips trembled, as if he were gripped by a nightmare. He clutched Goo Mahng's sleeve, his eyes flickering restlessly beneath their lids, long lashes fluttering like the wings of a swallow-tailed butterfly. "No, don't." "What?" "You..." Murong Chuyi's entire arm was spasming. Tendons stood out in his elegant hand. "You bastard. How could you... you..." Stunned, Goo Mahng rubbed his own nose in dejection. "I'm obviously trying to help. Why are you being so mean and cursing at me?" But Murong Chuyi was still trapped in his nightmare. His pale knuckles grew paler still, and he suddenly let out a muted grunt, as if he'd endured some pain or humiliation in the dream. The outer corners of his tightly shut eyes reddened. "Bastard." Goo Mahng looked at him and sighed. "Who are you cursing? Your little sister or the little white bird?" Of course Murong Chuyi didn't answer. Goo Mahng stayed with him for a while longer. Eventually, Murong Chuyi's mumbling died down. In the time it took to burn a stick of incense, he stopped speaking altogether. The heart balm medicine had begun to take effect. His features slowly relaxed, and the crease between his brows smoothed. Goo Mahng half carried and half dragged him to a dry patch on the stone platform and laid him down so he could rest more comfortably. Then he put his chin in his hands and sighed in boredom. "I fed you the plant, so when will you wake up?" Murong Chuyi gave no response. Goo Mahng continued waiting for another long interval. Murong Chuyi's eyes remained firmly closed. He showed no sign of waking. Goo Mahng sighed again, face propped in a hand as he studied Murong Chuyi. Murong Chuyi was a rare beauty indeed, refined and handsome with stunning looks. Goo Mahng wasn't well read. He didn't have the words to describe what he saw in detail. He just felt that, despite the severe lines of Murong Chuyi's features and his dauntless and intimidating air, there was an ethereal quality about him. He was like those dragon ladies in the picture books, or billowing snow in human form. In short, he was good-looking. In more detail, he was well worth looking at. Goo Mahng patiently watched him for an hour with his cheek still pressed to his hand. But no matter how worthwhile his face, Goo Mahng found that he could not keep looking at it after that hour had passed. He turned to Fan Do. "Do we really need to keep watching over him like this? I don't mind, but Princess is still at home, waiting for me to cook fish for him." Fan Do barked exuberantly. Goo Mahng nodded. "You're right. Dragon Lady is an outsider, but Princess is one of us. We should catch the fish first. Anyway, I've already fed him the plant. It's not our fault if he doesn't wake up." Fan Do barked again. And so, Goo Mahng went back to catching fish in the pond. The 3 fat grass carp he'd caught had escaped when Murong Chuyi's water strike knocked him over. His luck this time wasn't so good. Despite extensive hunting, all the fish he netted were small and bony. Sunset was drawing near, and smoke was rising from the chimneys of the capital. Goo Mahng couldn't help but feel glum. He hadn't imagined he would return empty-handed after so much effort. He stood by the lake, leaning on his net. The setting sun was like rouge rinsed from the boundless sky, shimmering across the ripples on the water. No way, Goo Mahng sighed. Don't all the books say that kindness is rewarded? I've saved the little dragon lady, so why aren't the plump fish jumping into my hands in gratitude? Footnote number 2, Little Dragon Lady, Xiao Long Yu, literally Little Dragon Lady, is a character from Jin Yong's classic wuxia novel Return of the Condor Heroes, who is described as ethereally beautiful and dressed in white, returning to the reading. As Goo Mahng pondered this, a voice crisp as clinking jade came from behind. What are you babbling about? Goo Mahng jumped in surprise. He whipped around and skittered backward in one jerky motion. You're awake? Why are you always sneaking around so quietly? The man who had soared over the waters was, of course, Murong Chuyi. His manner was back to normal and betrayed not a hint of his recent fainting spell. Goo Mahng remarked, That heart bomb sure was effective. You recovered so quickly. Murong Chuyi snorted softly and gracefully flew ashore. Those phoenix eyes swept over Goo Mahng from tip to toe. Noticing that his clothes were still soaked, Murong Chuyi lifted a finger and golden light flashed once more. When it dimmed, Goo Mahng touched his newly dried clothes in surprise and delight. Thank you very much, he said with a grin. You're a very kind person. Murong Chuyi wasted no more breath. You came to catch fish today? Yes, the princess at home is sick and can't eat anything, so I wanted to catch a fresh and plump fish for him. Goo Mahng rubbed his nose. Family needs to help each other out, after all. Murong's sharp brows dipped slightly. Princess? He paused briefly. Princess Mengzi. Goo Mahng waved his hand no. It's Princess Morxi. Murong Chuyi fell speechless. So this amnesiac beast of the altar wasn't being nasty, calling him a little dragon lady. Apparently, he'd somehow bestowed the ruthless god of war, Morxi, with the nickname Princess. Murong Chuyi looked away from Goo Mahng, his features betraying nothing. He stood at the edge of the lake with his hands behind his back, facing the wind head-on. Come ashore, he commanded. Confused, Goo Mahng waded out of the water, using the pole of his fishing net for leverage. What kind of fish do you want? Murong Chuyi asked. Goo Mahng was still lost, but sincerely responded. Perch. How many? The more the merrier. Too many would be wasteful, Murong Chuyi said. I think 5 is sufficient. What are you doing? Goo Mahng wondered out loud. Helping me nab some fish? Nab was honestly an insulting descriptor for what Chonghua's ignorant immortal Murong Chuyi was about to do. He was a master artificer, after all, whose command of the art could not be fathomed by even the likes of Juntian. With a gentle swish of his sleeves, a silver arrow materialized from thin air and shot into the water. It vanished into the depths of Peach Blossom Lake. When it broke the water's surface again and returned to shore, it was over 10 feet long, with 5 fresh, plump peach blossom perch strung upon it. Goo Mahng's eyes widened, clear as blue glass. He looked at the fish, then turned to look at Murong Chuyi. After a long beat, he uttered one simple, crude phrase to express the reverence he felt. Holy shit. Of course, it would be one of the vulgarities formerly favored by General Goo. Seriously, all his hard work had been outdone by a single sweep of the sleeves and flick of the fingers from Murong Chuyi. With a crook of Murong Chuyi's finger, the fish flew into the basket on Goo Mahng's back and the silver arrow vanished. If there's anything else you want, speak now, Murong Chuyi intoned. Goo Mahng shook his head as he stared at this beautiful white-robed man with his face to the wind in the golden light of dusk. Goo Mahng was a frank person. He said whatever he thought. No wonder Little White Bird worships you. Murong Chuyi's brow furrowed slightly. White Bird? I mean, you're something. Vexed, Goo Mahng clutched his head. I forgot his name again. Yoo-eh. That's the one. Goo Mahng clapped and smiled. No wonder he chases after you all the time. Daga, you're so awesome. Could you teach me how to go swoosh, swoosh, swoosh and catch fish like that? After a moment's pause, Murong Chuyi sighed softly. Give me your hand. Goo Mahng did as he was told. Murong Chuyi summoned a handful of silver needles from who knows where and placed them in Goo Mahng's palm. What's this? Voice obeying arrows, said Murong Chuyi. I've given you 50. This arrow can change size at will and obeys spoken command. Will that be enough for you to fish with? Overjoyed, Goo Mahng thanked him profusely. Yes, you're so generous. And such a nice person, too. Murong Chuyi didn't reply. He wasn't used to being thought of as a kind person. The people of Chonghua saw him as standoffish and aloof, merely Chonghua's infamous ignorance who pursued artificing with single-minded fervor. His expression became stiff and unnatural, and after a brief silence, he changed the topic. You mustn't tell anyone about what you saw today, especially Yoo-eh. Do not tell him. Goo Mahng nodded. No problem. But there's one person I'm afraid I can't hide it from. Who? Morsi, Goo Mahng replied. Medicine Master Jiang said heart balm can be used as poison, so he'll definitely tell Morsi that I asked him for it. Murong Chuyi considered this for a moment. That's fine. I'll explain things to Shizun myself. Think no further on it. Just remember to tell no one else. What if Morsi asks me before you tell him? You may respond with the truth. Okay, Goo Mahng agreed. Still, he couldn't help but ask. You're okay now, right? I'm fine. The spiritual energy of Peach Blossom Lake is usually enough to suppress my symptoms. Today's episode was unexpected. Oh, but Little White Bird and the others, they don't know about your sickness? They know a little, but not much. Murong Chuyi replied blandly. It's not a major issue. Yoo-eh will inevitably ask a bunch of questions, and I don't want to deal with it, so I'm asking you to keep it a secret. Murong Chuyi's story was full of holes, and his rationale behind the secret-keeping was so flimsy only a fool would believe it. But as things stood, Goo Mahng was pretty much a fool. He swallowed it without question. He raised a hand and solemnly swore to Murong Chuyi that he'd never tell another soul. By the time Goo Mahng took his leave and returned to the manor, night was approaching. Li Wei stood in the doorway, scanning the horizon. When he saw Goo Mahng return at last, evening light like a red cloak upon his shoulders, he rushed over in exasperation. What's the matter with you? Were you catching fish or looking after them as pets? What kept you so long? Goo Mahng took the basket from his back and showed it to Li Wei, smiling. I caught 5 fat fish. There's still time. Let me use the kitchen. Goo Mahng had never prepared fish in all the time he had lived at Shihe Manor, but he knew what to do. The scraps of memory he'd recovered included plenty of instances where he'd cooked fish. After he'd worked his way through those particular recollections, Goo Mahng swiftly prepared several dishes and arranged them neatly in a box. As he stepped out of the kitchen, he saw Li Wei waiting outside. Is he still in the study? Goo Mahng asked. Yes, he went straight there as soon as court concluded and hasn't eaten a thing. Watch this, Goo Mahng said, food box in hand. Shirty coaxing is my specialty. Wow, Li Wei replied happily. But a second later, he realized Goo Mahng's form of address wasn't right. He was being insubordinate again. He snorted in disapproval, but Goo Mahng had already walked to the end of the corridor with the box of food. A lantern glowed in silence, its oil pooling on the copper-based plate. Morsi's sharp profile shone in its halo of light. Although the northern frontier was stable for the moment, it wouldn't remain so. The armistice between the Liao Kingdom and Chonghua were a matter of necessity, not desire. The two nations had weakened each other through long conflict to the point that neighboring countries had begun to stir in action. If they continued waging a war of attrition, both would end up as easy prey for the third party. Thus, it was an armistice in name only. In truth, both countries remained at bitter odds, each eyeing the other to see who would recover first and most completely. The emperor had kept close watch over the Liao kingdom's movements this year. The imperial report Morsi held was full of information gathered by Chonghua's spies, including intelligence on many demonic plants and objects from the Liao kingdom. The contents were morbid, and Morsi's brow furrowed deeply as he read. Just as he came to some detailed notes about the flower of eightfold sorrows left behind by the demon race, the candle flame flickered. Goo Mahng pushed open the door and strode right up to his desk. "Morshidi, it's time to eat." After a pause, Morsi looked up. "You can leave it there. Also, you're not allowed to call me that. How many times have I told you? Why can't you remember?" Goo Mahng ignored him entirely. Reasoning with this person was useless. It was better to meet force with force. Feigning deafness, Goo Mahng opened the food box and lifted the dishes out one by one. Morsi frowned. "What are you doing now?" "I'm not doing anything," Goo Mahng said. "You read your books, and I'll eat my food. I'll just leave half for you." Another pause. "You want to eat dinner with me?" Goo Mahng blinked at him. "Haven't we eaten together before?" Morsi was silent. It was true that they had eaten at the same table in the Great Hall, but that was obviously different from sharing dishes from the same food box. It's not like I have much choice," Goo Mahng said carelessly, mimicking how he spoke in his memories. "There's nothing tasty left in the kitchen, so I have to steal some of yours. Shizun, have a little mercy. Be magnanimous and share with me, okay?" Morsi seemed rather stunned, so Goo Mahng redoubled his efforts and added fuel to the fire. "Also, I personally cooked all the dishes here tonight. Aren't you worried I might have poisoned it? I'll humbly go first and be your taste tester. That way, you'll be able to properly enjoy your meal. Your safety is 100% guaranteed." Morsi stared at him. "What are you even talking about?" Still, he let Goo Mahng do as he pleased. Goo Mahng cheerfully plunked the simple meal he'd made, 4 side dishes plus soup, onto Morsi's spotless red sandalwood desk. The dishes were still piping hot, steaming and fragrant. Although they were uncomplicated stir-fries, nowhere near as sophisticated as the cook's usual handiwork, they smelled wonderful and looked bright and appealing. There was a dish of crystal pork terrine served with Juntian vinegar and fresh ground ginger. The meat was sliced very thinly, and the pork rind was soft and tender. Another plate held water cow chop and lotus root stir-fried with slices of celtus, the delicate texture of the cow chop striking a refreshing harmony with the jade green celtus. There was also a dish of braised bamboo shoots, crisp and gleaming and generously coated with a glossy, savory sauce. In contrast, the soup was simple. A light and nourishing broth of 3 types of mushrooms garnished with fresh greens and slivers of cured pork to add richness. The final bamboo steamer lifted from the food box boasted a platter of sweet and sour perch. The fish had been sliced and prepared with a generous handful of julienne ginger to remove any odor. A splash of sizzling oil added a burst of flavor to the steamed fish, leaving the skin crisp golden and fat meltingly tender. The dish was finished with a drizzle of sauce made with simmered sugar syrup and vinegar. At the touch of one's chopsticks, the rich, translucent flesh shimmered and trembled beneath the delectable veil of sweet and sour sauce. Yum. Goo Mahng's chopsticks darted out in delight. He spoke aloud for the sake of Morsi, who was still reading with his eyes downcast. "All the fish belly's mine now," he proclaimed, and continued to apply himself to his meal. As he reached to carve off the rest of the fish belly, which had the fewest bones and the most succulent flesh, Morsi finally couldn't stand it anymore. He shut the bamboo scroll as his fingers closed around Goo Mahng's wrist. "What you doing?" Goo Mahng asked, his cheeks bulging. Morsi glared at Goo Mahng as he wrested the chopsticks from his hand and grabbed a bowl of rice. He picked up the prized piece of fish and dropped it into his own bowl. Secretly rejoicing, Goo Mahng affected an exasperated expression. "Why do you have to steal mine?" Morsi returned the chopsticks to Goo Mahng with ill grace and grabbed his own pair. What did you expect? Am I supposed to wait for you to finish, then gnaw on the bones? With that, he took a vicious bite of fish. Somehow, his white teeth and ferocious movements, coupled with this vaguely suggestive language, made Goo Mahng shiver as he sat on the other side of the table. To tear you apart, to drink your blood. His domineering manner and forceful gaze made Goo Mahng's head throb. Memories of the two of them pressed skin to skin flashed through his head, making his blood pulse so rapidly it sounded like a bow had snapped right next to his ear, as if his body was desperate to tell him that, yes, there had been a time when this man, who looked so cool and aloof, had bared his teeth like a feral beast and possessed him entirely, devoured him whole. Goo Mahng stared at Morsi's handsome face, his gaze sweeping from the high bridge of his nose down to his pale yet sensual mouth. His heart skipped a beat, surprising even himself. The revelation roused a strangely disagreeable feeling in Goo Mahng's chest. It was hot and uncomfortable, as if a pile of spent firewood had been kindled back to life, or a patch of new seedlings had been gently uncovered by the spring winds of April. He suddenly thought back to those memories from the night Morsi came of age. Morsi's lips had been pressed to his own, such a gentle touch, but it had left the old version of him shaking. Morsi didn't notice the unusual glimmer in Goo Mahng's gaze. Focused on eating his fish, he absent-mindedly licked a bit of sauce from his lower lip. Goo Mahng's chest erupted with scalding heat. He was filled with an indescribable urgency and primal desire. For some reason, he wanted to inch closer and gently touch Morsi's cheeks, his mouth. He had no understanding of what this desire implied. He felt that this fire had sprung to life in his chest like an instinct, and only by acting on it could he soothe his own agitation. Goo Mahng swallowed and inched closer, like a cub sniffing for danger. Cautiously, he leaned in toward the wholly oblivious Morsi. Chapter 75. The Yoo-eh clan's old affairs. By the way, Morsi looked up, interrupting Goo Mahng's surreptitious approach. The 3rd of next month is Yoo Chun-ching's birthday. Goo Mahng jumped, sweating with fear. He hadn't heard a single word Morsi said. Like a dreamer startled awake, he looked away in panic, refusing to meet his eyes. Oh, okay, he murmured, touching his reddened earlobes. His heart was still pounding. What had he meant to do? Why did he suddenly feel such pressing need? Between wolves, biting each other signaled dominance and submission. But what did it mean between him and Morsi? Was it the same? He wondered if he longed to overpower Morsi, but he discovered he didn't know what would count as overpowering. Did he want Morsi to kneel to him? No, not that. He wasn't interested in that at all. Or did he want... Are you listening? Goo Mahng came back to his senses. What? Yep, I'm listening. Morsi looked at him and frowned. Why are your ears red? Goo Mahng scratched at them. It's because I'm hot. Morsi eyed him. He's hot, all right. He didn't know what Goo Mahng's problem was, but he was almost finished with dinner anyways. He set down his chopsticks and said, We need to send Yoo Chun-ching a gift. I'm busy and can't get away from my responsibilities, so you and Li Wei can handle it. Goo Mahng paused. Why are we giving presents to Little White Bird? Morsi's face darkened. Didn't you say you were listening? Must have missed it. The 3rd next month, Morsi repeated, grinding his teeth, is Yoo Chun-ching's birthday. This time, Goo Mahng finally understood. His eyes widened. It's Little White Bird's birthday? Morsi saw the sparkle in Goo Mahng's eye and was somewhat taken aback. He knew Goo Mahng was fond of other people's celebrations. No matter if it was a birthday or a wedding, he loved nothing more than to join the fun. When Luo Li Jun's son got married recently, the majestic bridal procession had wound its way through the city. Goo Mahng wasn't allowed to come and go as he pleased, but upon hearing the clamor of gongs and drums, he climbed onto the roof and sprawled on the tiles to eat melon seeds and watch the procession. He clapped and cheered with the passers-by, adding his voice in applause from the rooftop. After nightfall, Morsi allowed him to go outside, and he happily hunted for peanuts, pine nuts, and dried longans that had fallen between the cracks in the brick pavement during the day. Full of delight, he brought back an entire pocketful and even offered to split some with Morsi. I know what you're thinking. Morsi told the big rat Goo Mahng, but I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Huh? Yue Manor never arranges a great banquet for Yue Chunqing's birthday, so there won't be any candy or snacks tossed on the ground for you to collect. Sure enough, Goo Mahng wilted. Oh, he murmured. After a pause, he curiously inquired, but Little White Bird is clearly very pampered by his family. Why don't they hold a banquet? Morsi took a sip of the hot soup. It's due to the circumstances of Yue Chunqing's birthday, he replied. Yue Chunqing's mother was from the imperial family, and she passed away due to complications in childbirth. Goo Mahng was taken aback, but he quickly put it together. So Yue Manor doesn't arrange a banquet for Little White Bird because Little White Bird's papa still hasn't forgotten Little White Bird's mama? Since when was Yue Juntian so faithful? There's no chance he would do such a thing out of respect for his deceased wife. Morsi responded blandly. But whether he would or not, Murong Huang was still of royal blood. Even if she died years ago, Yue Juntian still has to honor the imperial family. That's why he keeps his own son's birthday as Spartan as possible. So that's how it is, Goo Mahng mumbled. He ticked the names he knew off on his fingers and suddenly exclaimed, So Murong Chuyi is also part of the imperial family? He doesn't count, Morsi replied. Why? Isn't his surname also Murong? All of Chonghua's nobles have gold trim on their robes, but Murong Chuyi's clothes are trimmed in silver, said Morsi. Why do you imagine that is? Because white and silver suits him best? He looks more handsome that way, Goo Mahng responded in earnest. Morsi glowered. Do you think beauty is a contest? Well, why not? Murong Chuyi isn't of royal blood. He's an orphan who was taken in by Murong Huang, Yue Chunqing's birth mother. That is, in her youth, Murong Huang visited the temple on Mount Han outside the city. She came across a child on the way who had been abandoned on the steps of the temple. She felt they were fated to meet, so she took him in as a little brother. She even petitioned the late emperor to bestow the imperial surname upon him. Under his breath, Goo Mahng repeated a few snatches of Morsi's explanation to himself several times before finally understanding. His blue eyes widened. So, Little Dragon Lady was adopted? Stop giving people random nicknames. Morsi felt a headache coming on. You might get away with it for Yue Chunqing, but if Murong Chuyi heard you call him Little Dragon Lady, he'd shred you alive and use the pieces as raw material in his artificing forge. No, he wouldn't. Goo Mahng waved a hand. He's not that bad. Little Dragon Lady is a great person. Today He cut himself off mid-word, realizing his tongue had slipped. He glanced apprehensively at Morsi, hoping he hadn't noticed what Goo Mahng just said. But fate never bowed to the whims of man. General Mo had the eyes of a hawk and the ears of an owl, so how could he have missed it? He stared at Goo Mahng through narrowed eyes. You saw him today? Knowing he couldn't conceal this adventure from Morsi, Goo Mahng helplessly crossed his arms and said in sycophantic tones, Nothing could get past you, Shizun. You're so wise. Don't try flattering me. How did you meet him? Goo Mahng had no choice but to tell Morsi how he had bumped into Murong Chuyi at Peach Blossom Lake. Remembering Murong Chuyi's warning, he kept the story brief and spared the details. He had expected Morsi would be at least a little surprised by the revelation of Murong Chuyi's condition, but Morsi only frowned and sighed. How pointless. What do you mean? Yue Chunqing came to see me a few days ago and asked to borrow a copy of the Liao Kingdom's Compendium of Plants Demonic and Divine. He said he was searching for a cure-all herbal medicine, Morsi explained. Unfortunately, I lent the book to the overseer at the Cultivation Academy 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure if Yue Chunqing would ask him for it. Goo Mahng blinked. So the little white bird has known about his uncle's symptoms for several days already. Longer than that, Morsi said. He's known for a few years that his fourth uncle's had some health issues. One of the reasons he came with me to the northern frontier was to seek a cure beyond Chonghua's borders. But Yue Chunqing also knows Murong Chuyi can't stand the meddling of others, so he's done all his research secretly behind his uncle's back. Goo Mahng was stunned. So Little White Bird has already known for ages. But then why did Murong Chuyi say he only knew the gist of it? Murong Chuyi isn't wrong. Yue Chunqing knows his uncle is sick. He doesn't know what manner of affliction he suffers from. He can't find the specific cure, so he's looking for a panacea. Goo Mahng was baffled. Why does Murong Chuyi want to keep hiding it from him? They've never had a very good relationship. Morsi sighed. The Yue clan's family matters are a total mess. Goo Mahng sat in silence and considered the tangle between Jiang Yexue, Yue Chunqing, and Murong Chuyi for a good while. In the end, he could only clutch his head and sigh. Too confusing. I give up. Morsi looked askance. What's too confusing? As he spoke, Goo Mahng counted on his fingers. I'm trying to figure out why their relationship is bad. First, look at Murong Chuyi. He was a child taken in and brought up by Little White Bird's mama. So why would he dislike his sister's son? In the past, Goo Mahng innately understood the ways of the world when it came to matters like these. But now, in his ignorance, he needed Morsi to explain it to him. It's very simple, said Morsi. To Murong Chuyi, Murong Huang was both a teacher and a sister. Although Murong Huang called him her brother, she treated him and cared for him like he was her son. When she married into Yue Manor, she specifically asked His Imperial Majesty to allow Murong Chuyi to accompany her. That's why Murong Chuyi lives with the Yue clan. Goo Mahng nodded vigorously. I get it. In other words, Little White Bird and Little Dragon Lady were technically uncle and nephew, but in truth were more like brother and little brother. Correct, Morsi said. Murong Huang was Murong Chuyi's benefactor. When she was alive, Murong Chuyi accompanied her day and night, listening attentively to her every word, and regarded her with the utmost love and respect. Naturally, he wanted her to have only the best home to return to as well. But Yue Juntian... Morsi pursed his lips, unwilling to elaborate on his opinions of this person. But Goo Mahng spoke clearly. He's a bad person. Back then, Yue Juntian had a bad reputation, romantically speaking, explained Morsi. His parents and Murong Huang's had arranged their children's marriage long before, but Yue Juntian was profligate by nature. By the time he was 16, he had already gotten a teen player with child, taken her as a concubine, and sired a son. Impressive, Goo Mahng mumbled. Before he even married Murong Huang, he already had a concubine and a child on top of that. He pondered for a moment. Was that child Jiang Yexue? Morsi was uncomfortable discussing other people's dalliances. It was him. Then I understand why Little Dragon Lady doesn't like Jiang Yexue, Goo Mahng said. Yue Juntian took 2 wives. Murong Chuyi was the little brother of the first wife, Murong Huang, and so he's on the first wife's side. Jiang Yexue is the son of the concubine, and so he's on the concubine side. Morsi had no wish to debate matters of wives and concubines. Lowering his lashes, he sighed softly. Yes, although such things aren't uncommon in noble families. It's just as you said. Murong Chuyi revered his foster sister and was greatly displeased with the marriage. Furthermore, with his disposition, Yue Juntian would often make Murong Huang mad or angry. So, Murong Chuyi has always had very complicated feelings toward this nephew of his, whose blood is half Yue Juntian's. Morsi poured another 2 cups of hot tea, pushing one toward Goo Mahng and holding the other in his hands. Still perplexed, Goo Mahng said, I still don't really understand. Even if half of Little White Bird's blood is from someone he doesn't like, at least he's Murong Chuyi's sister's son. Don't people say, love both the house and the crows? Why doesn't he like a child his sister must have loved dearly? Because he thinks his sister wasn't happy. He believes that this child's birth was a mistake on top of a mistake. Steam rose from the tea in spirals, twisting like old grudges they discussed. On top of that, there is another, more important reason. What's that? Asked Goo Mahng. The complications with the birth didn't come out of nowhere, Morsi replied. From the moment Murong Huang married into the Yue family, she often fought with Yue Juntian and lived in a state of constant worry. On the day she went into labor, a woman whom Yue Juntian had an affair with came to the manor to cause trouble and said plenty of vulgar things. Murong Huang was already frail and on the verge of collapse. After this disturbance, her qi and blood circulation were badly affected. In the end, she lost all faith and passed away.
Goo Mahng let out a low sound of surprise. Mo Xi sighed. So you see, both the marriage and its issue were mistakes. In the end, these events stole the most important person on earth to Murong Chuyi. This is something he can't let go of even after so many years. Now that he's a master artificer, Yue Juntian has tried to break the ice with him many times, but Murong Chuyi won't even give him the time of day. As for Yue Chengqing, Murong Chuyi has never known how to face him. After a pause, Mo Xi concluded, that's pretty much the story. Goo Mahng still couldn't quite make sense of this complicated drama. Bewilderment showed in his azure eyes. After a long while, he spoke, puzzled. But Murong Huang's death isn't Yue Chengqing's fault. He was only a baby. Of course Murong Chuyi understands that Yue Chengqing is blameless in all this, but understanding is not the same as forgiveness. Rubbing his chin, Goo Mahng repeated Mo Xi's words under his breath. Understanding is not the same as forgiveness. His eyes flashed with confusion. Why does this sound familiar? You said it to me once. Really? Goo Mahng exclaimed in wonder. Wow, I'm amazing. Mo Xi said nothing. Seeing the pleased and self-satisfied look on Goo Mahng's face, Mo Xi decided not to tell him that he had gleaned this entire analysis of Murong Chuyi's psyche from Goo Mahng himself way back when. People's hearts were complex. Mo Xi hadn't understood this when he was younger, nor could he easily make sense of the love and hatred between others, their affection and enmity. It was Goo Mahng who carefully explained these things to him, who taught him the ins and outs of love and hate. In memory, Mo Xi saw how Goo Mahng, head pillowed against his arm as he lay on the riverbank, had once brought up Jiang Yeshui as they chatted. Goo Mahng had spat out a foxtail grass in his mouth and heaved a heavy sigh. Jiang Yeshui hasn't had it easy. To him, understanding and forgiveness are actually one and the same. See, after so many years, Murong Chuyi still treats Yue Chengqing so coldly because of his foster sister. Jiang Yeshui's mama passed away too, but he didn't fight with the other two. He can let go of the past and treat the two of them with courtesy. Good heavens, what a saint. If I were in his place, I might have gone insane. Mo Xi had turned to look at the stargazing youth lying beside him, his gaze full of tenderness. He knew that wasn't true. Even if Goo Mahng had been in Jiang Yeshui's place, he would have also maintained his composure. He wouldn't have taken his anger out on anyone or blamed them unfairly. He would have treated everyone with kindness. After all, Goo Mahng was bright and cheerful, like the sun. If someone clung to Murong Chuyi and cried, Murong Chuyi would push them away and leave with a sweep of his sleeves. If someone did the same to Jiang Yeshui, he would share in their sorrow and listen to them speak of their hurt. But Goo Mahng? If someone was clinging to Goo Mahng and crying, Goo Mahng would definitely make them smile through their tears. The one who brought laughter and light to others. That was the Gu Shishong Mo Xi had always loved in his deepest heart. Several days later, Mo Xi finally wrapped up all the military affairs that had descended upon him after the spring hunt. It was truly fortunate that Goo Mahng was there to look after him toward the end. Although Mo Xi procrastinated before every meal, he at least ate regularly and didn't put the medicine from Medicine Master Jiang to waste. On this particular day, Mo Xi had nothing to attend to. He considered if he should pay a visit to the Cultivation Academy and retrieve his copy of Compendium of Plants Demonic and Divine so that he could lend it to Yue Chengqing. Mo Xi pondered as he got ready. Although Yue Chengqing had been lazy ever since he was little, he had always treated his fourth uncle as his guiding star. When it came to anything involving Murong Chuyi, Yue Chengqing would spare no earnestness or effort. The child might have seemed unfocused, but in truth, he could be blindly obstinate when he was convinced of something. In the fearlessness of youth, a chest full of passion could hamper one's judgment. Hopefully, Yue Chengqing could stay out of trouble. Just as he was about to step out, Li Wei rushed into the hall, his face full of worry. "My lord!" "What happened? What's with that look on your face?" "Something's happened at Yue Manor," responded Li Wei. Mo Xi shivered, his heart pounding. "How could it be? Speak of the devil." "Is it Yue Chengqing?" he asked. Li Wei's eyes flew wide. It is. My lord, how'd you guess? Young Yue has disappeared.
Chapter 76. Dark Fire. The emperor sat within the golden throne room, his chin propped in one hand as he toyed with a string of jade beads in the other, listening to Yue Juntian's sniveling sobs. Your Imperial Majesty, Your Imperial Majesty, this old subject has but one true-born son. He is of half-royal blood. Your Imperial Majesty can't ignore this. If something happens to my son, then this old subject will... Upon saying these sorrowful words, he wailed bitterly and pounded his chest against the golden brick floor, snot and tears leaking down. The emperor found this sight rather distasteful. He wrinkled his nose and narrowed his eyes. All right. What use is crying? He counseled. We didn't say we'd ignore it. Yue Juntian kowtowed immediately, his head thumping against the floor. Many thanks to your Imperial Majesty. Many thanks to your Imperial Majesty, he cried tearfully. I ask that your Imperial Majesty send for the invincible Northern Frontier Army to flatten the Dream Butterfly Islands and bring my son back. Send for whom? You think that the Northern Frontier Army can be dispatched at will? The emperor was dumbfounded. People ridicule the idea of a mounted soldier sent across the world to secure a concubine's smile. Surely you can't expect us to send 100,000 troops after a single man, can you? Footnote number 3 for securing a concubine's smile. This is a quote from the poem by Du Mu, a Tang Dynasty poet, criticizing the wasteful extravagance of Emperor Xuanzong sending military messengers to fetch Li Qi for his beloved concubine, Yang Guifei. Concubine's smile is a cultivar of lychee named for Yang Guifei. Returning to the reading. Hearing this, Yue Juntian began to beat his chest and stamp his feet once more. Your Imperial Majesty, this old subject has led a lonely and painful life, he howled. My first wife passed away early, and now my son... Stop bawling. We've heard your spiel hundreds of times since you entered the hall. The emperor pressed a palm to his forehead. Listen, we will definitely rescue him, but forget about summoning the Northern Frontier Army. That's a truly preposterous thought. Yue Juntian, snot dripping, was about to break into more wailing. On the verge of losing his mind with disgust, the emperor hastily sat up straight and held up a hand. Enough! We're sufficiently alarmed, okay? We will point Shihajun to the matter. Surely that'll appease you? Yue Juntian stiffened for a moment, his nose running in silence. He sniffed loudly, forcing those clear droplets back into his nostrils. But Shihajun is just one man, he mumbled. What if he doesn't succeed? After enduring Yue Juntian's pestering for an entire day, the emperor had reached the limits of his patience. He couldn't believe Yue Juntian was still nitpicking his offer. Can you handle to do it then? Why don't you go ahead and fetch him yourself? Yue Juntian was a grand master artificer, but he had been afflicted with a mysterious illness several years ago. Although he had survived, his mind and body were no longer strong, and now that he was getting on in years, he couldn't walk even a mile without needing to take a long break. The idea of him reaching the Dream Butterfly Islands was pure fantasy. He was more likely to get killed on the way. Moreover, the man was selfish and had no regard for others. Years ago, when Jiang Yexue had defied his will and made him lose face, Yue Juntian had kicked his son out and made trouble for him in 101 ways. Yue Chengqing was much more pampered than Jiang Yexue, but how could he be more precious to Yue Juntian than his own life? He immediately shook his head, weeping. It's not that this old subject isn't willing. If I were still hale, I'd go at once to rescue my son from those accursed islands myself. But what? If you keep dawdling, your son's insignificant little life might just end. Right. Just Shihajun then. I'll be troubling Shihajun then. Yue Juntian could do nothing but agree. Thus did the emperor summon Shihajun to the palace. Because Mo Xi had already heard Li Wei's report on this matter,
He quickly grasped the situation as he listened to the Emperor's cursory summary. Although Morsi's opinion of this unfaithful old radish Juntian was poor in every regard, Jiang Yeshui was one of his oldest comrades in arms, and their brotherhood ran deep. Not to mention that Yue Chengqing had served as his deputy general for 2 years. Of course, Morsi wouldn't shirk his duty. It's just that the Dream Butterfly Islands are an archipelago. Do we have any definite news of Yue Chengqing's whereabouts? We do. Fortunately, we do, said the Emperor. Otherwise, this problem would be even more thorny than it already is. As he spoke, he summoned the last spiritual messenger bird that Yue Chengqing had sent. This was a fleeting creature of coalesced spiritual energy. The Emperor had cast protective spells upon it to preserve the details of Yue Chengqing's call for help, so even now the bird had yet to dissipate. As the Emperor mouthed the words of the incantation, the messenger bird's beak opened and closed. Yue Chengqing's voice came through, weak and shaking.
Fourth uncle! Papa!
At the sound of his son's voice, Yue Juntian burst anew into sobs, thumping his chest and stamping his feet.
I'm stranded on the Dream Butterfly Islands. It's dark everywhere. It's dark wherever I look. I'm starting to have dreams.
Yue Chengqing sounded tearful and terrified.
I don't know how long I can stay awake. I don't know what they want with me. Please save me. Fourth uncle, Papa, save me.
He whimpered.
It hurts. My blood. They want...
Morsi never heard what it was that they wanted. Yue Chengqing had exhausted his spiritual energy and couldn't record anything more. The Emperor wound his string of agate beads around his wrist. Does Shizun have any thoughts? After a moment of consideration, Morsi spoke. The Dream Butterfly Islands are demonic islands uninhabited by humans. The monsters that live there are temperamental, and it's difficult to judge their powers. Under normal circumstances, cultivators wouldn't go there unless they had no other alternative. However, he paused. According to folktales, the Dream Butterfly Islands are composed of around 20 islands. Different types of demons live on each one, with a wide range of disposition and character between them. Yue Chengqing mentioned 3 pieces of information. First, it's dark everywhere. Second, he's having dreams and might not be able to maintain consciousness. Third, the demons seem to be interested in his blood. The Emperor was quite intrigued. Smiling, he stroked his chin. So if Shizun were to guess, which clan of demons has taken our Yue Chengqing hostage? The bats, said Morsi. Yue Juntian made a soft sound, his lips white as he trembled. Bats. Yes. There are records of a vampire bat island among the Dream Butterfly Islands. He burst into tears. Oh God, my son, my beloved son. But that's just a guess. Our most pressing task should be to scout the Dream Butterfly Islands as soon as possible. Taking this to mean that Morsi planned to depart soon, Yue Juntian hastily wiped his face and spluttered weepily. Many thanks to Shizun. Many thanks to Shizun. I'm not doing this for you, but for your esteemed son, Morsi replied coolly. There's no need to thank me. Yue Juntian's lips moved without sound. He knew of Morsi's friendship with Jiang Yeshui and understood his implication. Referring to Yue Chengqing as his esteemed son was a pointed reminder that he wasn't Yue Juntian's only son. There was also the son he had abandoned like an old shoe and harassed in every way, Jiang Yeshui. Seeing that the atmosphere between Morsi and Yue Juntian had become awkward, the Emperor coughed. This matter is an urgent one. Shizun, return to your manor to make preparations and set out at once. Of course, said Morsi. One more thing. Keep this life crystal on you. The Emperor waved his hand, and a blue and white spirit stone appeared at Morsi's side. These life crystals were created from a drop of umbilical blood taken at the birth of some of Chonghua's prominent nobles. The stones would glow day and night with a unique light until their owners died. In Chonghua's oldest stories, it was said that such a crystal brought good fortune to the newborn infant, and so many nobles had their own. This is Yue Chengqing's. Right now, the light still looks all right, so there's no need to fear for his life, the emperor continued. Keep it on hand. Although it can't point the way for you, it can help all of you keep track of Yue Chengqing's status. Mo Xi knitted his brows. All of us? Oh, we forgot to mention, said the emperor. 2 others requested to join this mission. They would not hear of staying behind. One is Murong Chuyi, and the other is Jiang Yexue. Mo Xi's eyes widened abruptly. They're coming too? At Mo Xi's expression, the emperor replied, No need to worry about Qingxue Elder. He might not have use of his legs, but he's still a Grand Master Artificer. His wooden wheelchair has many mechanisms for mobility. He won't slow you down. That's not what I meant. It's that, besides Goo Mahng, who must remain under my supervision, I had no plans to take anyone else with me. The temperaments of these demons are strange and volatile. Many types of demons dislike any contact with humans. I'm afraid that the more people in the party, the harder they'll lash out in retaliation. It's just 2 more people, said the emperor. You're making it sound like there's a whole army accompanying you. If we tell you to take them, you will. There's strength in numbers. Mo Xi couldn't persuade the emperor otherwise. All he could do was return to the manor and prepare for the journey. He hadn't much to pack. Other than some basic talismans and spirit stones, his most important baggage was Goo Mahng. There was no way Mo Xi could leave this troublemaker behind. Goo Mahng's memories were all jumbled lately. He might remember something he shouldn't at any time. If Mo Xi wasn't at his side when it happened, the consequences would be hard to predict. He had to admit there was a second reason. Goo Mahng's fall from grace and subsequent act of treason had both taken place when Mo Xi was absent. After all that had happened, deep down, Mo Xi very much feared the thought of a long separation from Goo Mahng. Where are we going? Goo Mahng asked as Mo Xi packed his tiankun pouch. To rescue someone, Mo Xi responded. To rescue Little White Bird? Yes. Just us? Mo Xi's hands stilled as he turned to look at Goo Mahng. No. Murong Chuyi and Jiang Yexue are coming as well. He could hear the apprehension in Goo Mahng's voice. Mo Xi knew he didn't like interacting with strangers. Are you afraid of them? If it's those 2. After giving it some thought, Goo Mahng said, Then it's okay. When Mo Xi and Goo Mahng arrived at the roadside departure pavilion outside the city, they discovered Murong Chuyi and Jiang Yexue waiting for them. It was a truly bizarre situation. Jiang Yexue and Murong Chuyi were enemies who wanted less than nothing to do with each other. Murong Chuyi in particular refused to spare Jiang Yexue one glance more than necessary. But right now they shared a goal, to carry out this rescue with Shizun. One of them sat under the departure pavilion while the other stood under the pear blossom tree beside it. Across this intimidating distance, they were talking. Mo Xi was too far away to overhear what they said, but the hostility emanating from the exchange could be felt 10 leagues away, especially Murong Chuyi. He was attired in his customary silver-trimmed white robes, standing with his hands behind his back. As his ethereal silk robes fluttered in the wind, his handsome and elegant features were cold as if covered in a layer of bitter frost. As Mo Xi and Goo Mahng drew near, the other 2 fell silent. Qingxue Elder, Murong Xianxiang. Goo Mahng copied Mo Xi's greeting. Qingxue Elder, Murong Xianxiang. In the few days since they had last met, Jiang Yexue's face had thinned considerably, and faint shadows were visible under his eyes. Ever since Yue Chengqing's disappearance, he had been so distraught he could neither eat nor sleep. Shizun, he said. He turned to give Goo Mahng a small nod, which could be considered a greeting. As for Murong Chuyi, he had never been bound by the conventions of etiquette. When his mood was poor, he ignored everyone without exception. In this delicate atmosphere, the 4 set off on their journey. The Dream Butterfly Islands weren't far from Chonghua. With 2 artificers at their party, there was no need to travel by sword. Jiang Yexue received a tiny walnut from his tiankun pouch. When he tossed it onto the ground and cast a spell, it transformed into a swift boat that could still sail among the clouds and traverse 10,000 miles in a day. Jiang Yexue invited Mo Xi and Goo Mahng onto the boat, and then turned to Murong Chuyi, who still stood beneath the flowering tree. Chuyi, You taught me to build this boat a long time ago. I've altered the design a little. Now, the ship can carry 100 or more people. Come take a look. But Moo-wrong Chuyi said stiffly, I'll not take a single step onto your boat. No need to trouble yourself, nephew. Goo Mahng, leaning over the ship's railing, pondered Moo-wrong Chuyi's words. A thought belatedly occurred to him. He pointed at Moo-wrong Chuyi, then at Jiang Yeshui. He calls him nephew? He pointed at Jiang Yeshui, then at Moo-wrong Chuyi. And he's his uncle? Goo Mahng turned to look at Mo Xi. Right, I remember now. That's indeed their relationship. But I couldn't tell at all. This uncle looks to be about the same age as his nephew. Don't talk so much, Mo Xi admonished. Let's go into the ship's cabin. But it was evident that Moo-wrong Chuyi had already heard what Goo Mahng said. For some reason, his face became even frostier than usual. Chuyi, you... Jiang Yeshui began. To whom are you speaking? Moo-wrong Chuyi cut Jiang Yeshui off, his sharp brows drawn severely together. Jiang Yeshui, you are born of Ye Juntian's concubine, he stated, tone chilly. In terms of seniority, you should address me as uncle. You and Ye Chengqing are both the younger generation. When addressing me in this manner, don't you feel you've forgotten yourself? Jiang Yeshui paused. Yes, Xiaoju is right to teach me. Footnote number 4, Xiaoju is youngest maternal uncle. Returning to the reading. Moo-wrong Chuyi let out a snort and raised a hand to twirl a flower between his fingers. The pear blossom that had landed on his shoulder transformed into a beautifully decorated Jiangnan pleasure boat. The spiritual ship could also fly, just like Jiang Yeshui's walnut ship. Moo-wrong Chuyi stepped onto the pleasure boat, his tall, upright figure disappearing behind a flaxen curtain. Jiang Yeshui was silent for a moment. He turned back to speak to Mo Xi. My apologies. I've embarrassed myself in front of Shizun. Mo Xi shook his head and murmured a few words of consolation. As the two ships entered the sea of clouds, Mo Xi sat in the cabin listening to the wind outside. Even now, he couldn't help but feel that something was amiss. The way Jiang Yeshui spoke to Moo-wrong Chuyi was too odd, as if he were hiding some secret that onlookers wouldn't know. And whatever this secret was, it seemed to cause Moo-wrong Chuyi a great deal of consternation, to the point that he deliberately pressed the point of seniority despite usually paying no mind to such worldly conventions. As a result, Moo-wrong Chuyi not only refused to enter Jiang Yeshui's boat, his phoenix eyes had also flashed with some kind of unspoken warning. I am the superior. You are the inferior. I am the respected elder. You are the younger generation. I will not tolerate your trespass. Mo Xi furrowed his brow. Why would Moo-wrong Chuyi want to emphasize this boundary so pointedly? All right, you guys. So I think we're going to stop here today. I was actually going to read more, but I think I'm going to make the next day's video longer. So the first thing that I want to talk about concerning these chapters is so here we have it, that our poor little Mo Xi ended up getting sick because he likes to be a workaholic around the same time of year. So he wasn't eating and sleeping properly, and nothing anyone was doing was working until we had Goo Mahng. And might I just say, I thought Goo Mahng's approach to getting him to eat was clever. Instead of bringing separate food, he bought one thing and started eating from it. Basically, right in front of Mo Xi, like, this is so good. And then just having that extra aspect of sharing a bowl with Goo Mahng rather than having his own. And then basically about to eat it all. And it's like, hold on, didn't you say you brought this food for me? So that was pretty clever. I loved that little moment that they had. The next thing I want to say is still within that realm, with Goo Mahng happening to run into Moo-wrong Chuyi. That was an interesting little exchange because, so first off, we have that clearly he is sick, Moo-wrong Chuyi, and we don't know necessarily what this sickness is. and how often it affects his body. And we have him asking Goo Mahng to keep it a secret, but we later found out that obviously Yoo Chun-ting already knows, which that's not surprising at all. I imagine, that he would have paid deep attention to his uncle. So even if he doesn't know exactly what it is, I'm sure he knows that it's probably a bit more serious than even Murong Chuyi has admitted. So there is that. And just as far as their interaction, it was nice to see a more considerate, if you will, or nicer side of Murong Chuyi, because after Goo Mahng helped him, he was willing to get the fish for him and even gave him 50 of those arrow thingies. He didn't have to do those things. He could have just been like, thank you, and then chucked the deuce and left Goo Mahng to his own devices. But that's not what happened. Speaking of leaving Goo Mahng to his own devices, it was really shocking to see that he was allowed to leave the Shihe Manor by himself and go somewhere. And not only that, he was even given permission to take a medicine, the heart balm, that could also be used as a poison. I was like, oh, so y'all just really don't care. Is that what is going on here? Okay, cool. But I mean, I'm happy for him. I'm here for it. Let him roam free because he's not doing anything, I suppose. But, it is what it is. I was glad that we were also able to get a little bit more history on like the dynamic of Murong Chuyi, Jiang Yeshui, and Yoo Chun-ting, and just like the history of them in general, not necessarily just the dynamic. It sucks to know that his father was basically a playboy. That's what it sounds like. And then, even before getting married to his betrothed woman or fiance, whatever you want to call it, he'd already knocked up a concubine, got himself a woman. It's like, hold on. How you get yourself a woman and you haven't even finished committing to the woman that you were to be committed to? Are we kidding? Is this what we're doing? So, already don't like his father, but it is what it is. And the father's name, just to go through it really quick, is Yoo-eh. I'm not doing the tones, but just the pronunciation. Yoo-eh, like Yoo Chun-ting. And then Jun, Jun, Juntian, Juntian, Yoo Juntian. Okay, now that we've gone over how to say that, we can get going with the rest of the notes. So again, after just understanding the history that happened with Murong Huang, which was Yoo Chun-ting's mother, but also like if you will, a pseudo mother or whatever for Murong Chuyi. But knowing what happened to her, how he believed that she was unhappy, which I'm almost certain she was, obviously, and then her giving birth to Yoo Chun-ting, I can definitely understand from his childhood perspective how he would think that giving birth to Yoo Chun-ting was a mistake on top of a mistake. And then having that solidify for him as a child, of course, he would carry that thought into adulthood, whether it's reasonable or not. And then obviously, Jiang Yeshui being born of a concubine makes perfect sense also why he would dislike Jiang Yeshui. So he just got a bunch of displacement going on, essentially. If he wants to be mad at someone, which he is still mad at that person, he just needs to direct all of that anger toward Yoo Juntian. That is the only person that deserves his ire. Nevertheless, we come up with opinions and thoughts as children, and if they are not corrected, we carry those into adulthood. Nevertheless, again, it was good to get that background information because now we know exactly why Murong Chuyi slapped Murong Lian when they were at the dream transfiguring or transformation, whatever it was, pool. It was because, remember, he had said, go ask your mother or something like that to Yoo Chun-ting. So that's all he had to say to get that slap. Absolutely hilarious. So one of the things I want to teach you all, that was a phrase within the book. One of the things that was mentioned, I guess, when Goo Mahng was talking, and he was like, wait, if he's going to love Murong Huang, the mom, why not love Yoo Chun-ting as well? Aren't you supposed to love the house and the crows? So first off, I'm going to teach you how to say it. This is an idiom. And then I'm going to teach you what it means if you can't already, assume the meaning. So you have which is love, Wu ji wu. Really quickly. So again, I is to love, and then we have wu, which is going to be house. The way you say house now is 房子, but anyway, and then ji is like to go to, extend to, or and then wu, that's crow. So it's like love, house, extend to crows. So essentially, it's saying that if you love a person, that should extend to everything associated with them, including any perceived flaws or shortcomings, basically. So love me, love my dog, essentially. You can't have one or the other, basically. So I woo ji, I woo ji woo, I woo ji woo. There y'all have that. Anyway, that's enough of that. And then pretty much the last thing that I wanted to talk about happening as we go into Juntian's birthday, this man has decided to disappear to this one of these dream butterfly islands. The question is, why in the world has he gone off to some random island where there are demons? What are you doing, my guy? So that's what we need to figure out. And I'm assuming that just like in the end of volume 1 going into volume 2, I'm going to count this as a new arc, because this is definitely going to be something that happens over multiple chapters, going to save Juntian and finding out why exactly he's there and what he was attempting to do. But right now, all we know that he's in a dark cave or something like that, probably. He can't see, he's passing out, or he's dreaming things, weird things, and somebody wants his blood. So, yeah, I guess let's just see what happens with that. Also, just to give you guys more of an update, because I'm reading this like the next day, because of what I did share in the beginning, I'm still waiting on news from my father. I'm going to send a message to him today to kind of figure things out as far as my grandfather is concerned and when his funeral is going to be. I'm assuming obviously it's not going to be this weekend, because if it was, then he would have said it already. But just to go ahead and still try to honor our live reading sessions together, I've decided we're going to go ahead and have a reading session this Saturday. I know I had mentioned it to you all before. It was like, I don't know, unless I do it 30 minutes earlier than usual. Well, I'm going to do it 30 minutes earlier than usual. So it's going to be from 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That way, at least one can be done. I'm going to assume that the funeral would be next weekend, the 13th, the 12th through the 14th. That way, even the following week, like on the 20th or the 21st, we can go live again for the second time for the month. That way, all of September is taken care of. It's just more convenient to do them on the weekends rather than during the weekday. So, yeah, still trying to figure all of that out. And the goal is actually for us to get through this book a lot faster than I originally intended. So we can go ahead and start the fourth one, just because my, what do you call it? My week vacation is coming up, and I don't plan on reading anything during that vacation. But the thing that I will say is we're still going to be like on schedule for the rest of this year. Everything I had already calculated, reading the books, even with that week break, so that we could get through everything. And yeah, that's that. So yeah, I can't wait to see you all's comments and react to them, maybe comment to some of them. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The only other thing I do have to say, oh, yes, how could I forget? So this is for those of you who are on YouTube. So if you're a Patreoner, you're actually more than welcome to drop out now, unless you just want to know. But you're already paying here. You would just be double paying on YouTube. But I applied to be a YouTube partner, and they finally said yes, to my surprise. And it was super duper exciting. I was so happy. So I've already mentioned in a video that now you guys can give super thanks and things like that. So basically on videos that I've done, and any videos that I do in the future, not talking about live, but just like regular videos, you guys can actually leave supers. So you can leave a super thanks on a video. Basically, you can give whatever dollar amount that you want and leave a comment, and it'll bump your comment up to the top and be highlighted in green and stuff like that. It's really, really cool. There are also super stickers and, stuff in the super chats. So I think the super chat is for when we go live and people are commenting. If you do a super chat, your comment is going to be bumped to the forefront so that I can see it more readily, basically, which is something that would be even more enticing and beneficial. I'm assuming like when we have more members and more people attending live sessions. With that being said, I wanted to also let you guys know that we do have a membership available on YouTube, which is originally what I wanted to do in the first place and was going to do. But it was just, containing the smut chapters. That's where the Patreon has come in. So just like on Patreon, I have a tier called Cultivator in Training. And on here, on YouTube now, I officially have a membership, and it's called Cultivator in Training. YouTube does their pricing in increments of blank 99. So this is $1.99 or $1.99. And basically what you can do, I'm going to give you guys early access to videos. It's going to be 48-hour early access, just like the Patreoners. Whether they're on the $3 or the $2 tier, everybody's getting 48-hour access. Not only that, but obviously you get priority reply to comments again. So I see them, you guys' comments before, other people, they just show up at the top and stuff like that. There will also be members only polls. That is something that will be even more accessible and tangible as we get more people who join the membership, but you'll have more dictation over certain things in the future when I, come up with stuff. But again, the early access, and you guys will also get 2 live stream read-alongs per month, just like Patreon. I just thought, that was originally what I wanted to do on the YouTube channel anyway. So, of course, the only difference basically between you guys and Patreon is you're not getting the smut, essentially. That's all, because that is reserved specifically for Patreon. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, this is the Cultivator in Training. You can, I guess, go to my page and click memberships or subscribe or join. One of those things, I don't know. And if you would like to become a member, you are more than welcome to do so. It's not pressing or anything like that, but I just wanted to share it with you guys because it's exciting for me. I wasn't expecting it. In the midst of horrible news, this was good news. So anyway, I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing your comments and your thoughts on the past couple of chapters. And until next time, well, I Neiman.